The first step in beating procrastination is to make productive behavior completely automatic. To do this, you can take advantage of how your brain creates habits. Let's use a story to illustrate this and the other tools for beating procrastination. So let's say you're in marketing and part of your job is to write a weekly email newsletter. But every week you find yourself pushing it off to the last minute. Yet you know that by pushing it off, your work just won't be as high quality as it could be, and you'll feel rushed and anxious about the whole thing. So you have to make working on the newsletter a habit. To do that, you need a cue, a trigger that tells you when to engage in the behavior. That could be an alarm on your phone that goes off at a certain time every day and tells you to start writing. To solidify the habit, you need a reward. You need something you'll enjoy after you complete the behavior. Technically, this can be anything that makes you feel good because the key is to activate pleasure centers in your brain like the nucleus accumbens. These areas are closely connected to brain regions involved in motivation, like the striatum. So as you reward the behavior over and over again, you effectively increase your motivation to do that behavior in the future. You have begun to forge new neural pathways that will quickly get stronger the more you engage in the habit. Of course, this is easier said than done. Even if you do make a habit of productive behavior, it's very easy to get distracted, and soon you find yourself staring at your phone instead of writing the newsletter. So the second tool to beat procrastination is to develop sustained, focused attention. In your brain, there are two major attention systems, known as the dorsal and ventral attention networks, which each mediate different types of attention. So you finally started writing that newsletter. For a few minutes, you're cranking out sentences, but then you feel your phone vibrate in your pocket. Without thinking, you reach in your pocket, and within seconds, your attention has been derailed, and eventually you find yourself scrolling YouTube shorts, just watching video after video. So what happened there? While you were focusing on writing, your dorsal attention network, in combination with another set of brain regions known as the frontoparietal control system, were keeping you zeroed in on the task. But then your ventral attention network, along with another brain network called the salience network, activated in response to your phone buzzing in your pocket. These networks acted like a switch, pulling your attention toward your phone and then re-engaging the dorsal network and the frontoparietal control system to work on scrolling. So the first thing you can do to enhance your focus is simple: eliminate distractions. So you decide to put your phone in do not disturb mode, and whenever possible, you find a quiet space to work where you won't be bothered by other people. But even after you've eliminated distractions, you have to find a way to pour all of your attention into just one task. That's no easy feat, right? So you decide to make it easier by setting a timer for how long you're going to commit to writing the newsletter. At first, you do just 25 minutes at a time, take a break between sessions, but as you build this behavior, you find that you want to gradually extend this duration to an hour or more. Now, one powerful way of improving focus is meditation. But like most benefits of meditation, this needs to be done consistently, preferably on a daily basis for at least 10 minutes. It's also essential to get adequate sleep, to eat healthy, to manage your schedule, because all of this will allow you to have naturally higher levels of focus when you write. And this all has to do with focused attention being tied to dopamine levels in the brain. Dopamine tends to help us focus partly by coordinating the activity of those networks I mentioned. But what if you feel anxious about how much progress you're making? You might be focused on writing for like 30 minutes, but you're simply not getting enough done. And that brings us to tool number 3. Set SMART goals. SMART is an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And why is this important? As the neuroscientist Elliot Berkman explained in a 2018 review article, we can understand goals through two lenses: the motivational and the cognitive, or what he calls the will and the way. The cognitive dimension, or the way, involves executive functions like attention, working memory, inhibitory control, and planning, which are mediated by a set of neural networks known as the frontoparietal control system. On the other hand, the motivational dimension of goals, the will, is equally crucial. It includes regions of the brain associated with the valuation and reward system. The motivation to pursue goals is also closely linked with the dopamine system. Dopamine makes us more likely to take action. When you set SMART goals, you take advantage of the cognitive dimension, the way, by setting a specific and measurable goal. That allows your brain to begin the process of problem solving that will eventually lead to the completion of the goal. At the same time, SMART goals can enhance your motivation, the will, right? Because they're achievable, which means there's a high likelihood of reward. They're relevant, which means this goal is deeply valuable to you. And they're time-bound, which adds a sense of urgency. And finally, by accomplishing sub-goals, you get a boost of dopamine that will help propel you to the next sub-goal. Yet these goals you've set for yourself can still seem daunting. When you think about them, you might feel anxious, like the effort involved is just a bit overwhelming and you'd rather deal with it later. So you procrastinate, right? Because negative emotions are stopping you from taking action. And this is where tool number 4 comes in, emotion regulation. Your emotions are a result of particular patterns of activity in your brain. They are signals about what you value. They're natural reactions that occur when something important happens. And one of the most important tools for emotion regulation is interoception. Interoception is the ability to sense and interpret internal bodily sensations like heart rate, breathing, and digestive processes. It's a key aspect of emotion regulation because it allows us to be aware of the feeling component of emotions and to amplify or neutralize it to make the emotion as a whole more or less powerful. Interoception is the result of signals traveling from your body through the brainstem and thalamus and ultimately arriving in a region of the cortex known as the insula. When we experience powerful negative emotions and want to free ourselves from their grip, one thing we can do is drill down into the painful feelings that come with them. You can shift your attention from the discomfort and the urge to get rid of it and toward the waves of pressure, heaviness, and tingling. In doing so, it's likely that you're using prefrontal control networks to change the neural activity in the insula and in regions involved in perceiving pain. When you procrastinate, you effectively distract yourself from those negative sensations and emotions by turning your attention to something else. So, in addition to regulating your feelings, as I just described, an important part of overcoming procrastination is doing the opposite of distraction, exposure. You have to teach your brain over and over again that engaging in writing is not so bad after all. You can do this using one of the techniques that is also helpful for focus, setting a certain amount of time that you'll work on the task. So by actively regulating your negative emotions around writing the newsletter, you're able to get over that initial bump in the road that previously stopped you from getting started. But over time, you find that you're just going through the motions. You're focusing, setting goals, engaging in productive habits, and actively regulating your emotions. But the whole thing somehow seems hollow. It seems pointless and boring. So you once again procrastinate. And even when you do get yourself to work, you feel like you're burnt out. So this brings us to tool number 5, tap into your values. The key to this tool is knowing why you're doing it in the first place. Ask yourself, what is the ultimate purpose I'm fulfilling by engaging in this activity? If you can't answer that question, then the task is not important. However, this question is surprisingly deep. The answer can't just be something like, I'm writing this newsletter so I can get my next paycheck. Because if that's all it comes down to, it's no wonder you feel hollow. You can go much, much deeper than that. You can look to your deepest desires and say something like, I'm writing this newsletter because I want to provide for myself and my family, to pursue meaningful work, and to grow as much as possible along the way. The thing is, it has to actually be true. It has to be authentic to who you are as a person, your identity, right? Or it's not a real value and it won't work to drive you forward. When we consider what we value, even if it's something simple like a nice glass of wine or more complex, like seeing ourselves as an exceptionally great copywriter, there's a common pattern of brain activity. This is largely centered on the interaction between two regions, the ventral striatum and the ventral medial prefrontal cortex, which is associated strongly with our understanding of ourselves, our identity, and what we value most deeply. As you tap into deeply held values, your experience of writing the newsletters and work in general begins to dramatically shift. You build skills that allow you to overcome procrastination in other settings. But despite accomplishing more, you start to develop a new problem. You can't appreciate your wins. You always feel like you're setting a new goal that's higher and more ambitious than the last. It feels like a hamster wheel. So even with your newfound skills, you begin to slip back into procrastination. This is why the final tool, number 6, is so crucial. You have to shift your mindset in 2 specific ways. First, you have to shift from thinking solely about how far you have to go and instead measure just how far you've come. This is an idea popularized by the psychologist Benjamin Hardy and the coach Dan Sullivan in their book, The Gap and the Gain. The gap is the distance between you and your next goal, which makes it a fundamentally negative evaluation of your progress. And the truth is, most of us are gap focused. It's not that we, shouldn't have goals or think about how far we are from them, but instead, we need to spend more time focusing on the gain. The gain is a measurement of how far we've already come, how much we have already achieved toward our goals. And this is a fundamentally positive evaluation of our progress. It allows you to appreciate how far you've come and feel confident in your ability to traverse the path ahead. Now, the second mindset shift has to do with recognizing a cognitive bias among procrastinators. A 2022 study published in the journal Nature Communications measured something called temporal discounting of effort and reward among procrastinators, and what they found was revealing. To quote the authors, procrastination might stem from a cognitive bias that would make doing a task later, compared to now, appear as much less effortful, but not much less rewarding. So procrastinators may falsely believe that waiting until later will magically make a task easier while simultaneously not having any effect on how rewarding it is. So in addition to everything we've talked about in this video, it's important to be very clear about what the consequences will be if you procrastinate. Very often those consequences are simply poorer results on whatever you're working on. Additionally, there may be anxiety that pops up whenever you think about the task. That being the case, the most important thing to remember is that if you care about doing something well, then procrastination is almost certainly not the optimal strategy. There's a great quote that encapsulates this advice, and it starts with a question. How do you eat an elephant? The answer is 1 bite at a time. So with any big and important task, the key is to take many small bites over time rather than trying to just swallow the whole thing in one go. Now, I've personally benefited a huge amount from implementing the tools outlined in this video, and I really think you will too if you take them seriously and really put them into practice. But procrastination is just one of the many problems you'll face while trying to create your best life. Now, my mission is to provide you actionable, science-based insights into your brain that allow you to achieve your personal and professional goals. And I recently created a new series of videos on Patreon that directly address this kind of personal development. The first of these videos goes deep into the idea of the gap in the gain, which I mentioned earlier in this video, and what may be going on in the brain when we shift our mindset to the gain, as well as some concrete strategies for how to do that. The link to that video is in the description below. But to be clear, these videos will never be published for the public, so they're only available for Patreon supporters. To get access to them, go to patreon.com/senseofmind and sign up. As you'll see, you'll not only get access to these Patreon-only videos, but also live recordings of monthly live streams where I take a deep dive into individual neuroscience and psychology topics, as well as written blog post versions of every new video and live stream. The great thing is that you can also do a 7-day free trial in case you want to try before you buy. On the other hand, you can get 15% off your subscription if you decide to pay for a year up front instead of paying monthly. If you do, you will be helping to keep this channel alive because I depend on patrons and viewers like you to keep this thing going. All right, Well, thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you next time.